Hey everybody, it is your Uncle Jeff, and it is another episode of RPG Jam Sessions. Tonight, I want to talk about the solemn responsibility that is every new GM's, and that is to look for inspiration. That is to look for methods to better your game, and to always be training. I feel like that should be a hashtag of some kind. But aside from that, I had the ignoble responsibility to weather the storms of a cold recently, and during my illness I was able to sit back and relax on the couch forcibly, as my wife said that I needed the rest and to recuperate, and I ended up binge watching a few shows, some hit or miss. It was a backlog, as it were, of things that I had either put off or thought that maybe I'll be able to use at a different time to mine for information. And I ended up watching a show called The Expanse. It was on Sci Fi. It started, I think, last year. It's a great story set in the far future where Earth has colonized the solar system. There is divisions culturally, kind of like Morlocks versus Eloys, with a third group added into the mix, maybe a fourth. I'm not going to spoil anything. But the great thing is that 15 minutes into the show, I stopped everything and I said, I should take some notes here. I'm ramped up on medications. My brain has had all the blocks removed. No, I'm kidding. I just felt that I needed to start taking some notes. It's a practice that I've actually gotten into several years ago that I'll keep, either I'll be able to take some notes on my phone, which is kind of fun, being able to have that at hand anytime. Or used to have, before I had the fancy phone, I had a notebook with a pen that I would use and put some notes down there if I would see something, experience something, and I would just start taking notes. And that's something that for a seasoned GM, you kind of get into that practice. You want to start adding things to your game as best as you can, or as much as you can, because you never know. You'll have whatever current session that's going on in the back of your head back there. Cogitations abound, and seasoned GMs may have that kind of at the forefront, to that instinct to look for things that will add to it. So for folks that are new at this, that are new at game mastering, this is a method that can be used every single day. Whether you have a dream journal that you use, I've done that in the past, where you just have something that's close by that you can take notes on, or maybe take pictures with. If you see a gnarled tree or a gnarled root system for a tree that just looks amazing, that you think I could totally just describe that and add that into a game, or it's something that just really inspires you, maybe a backdrop of some kind, and so you just snap a photo of it. Reading an article, highlighting things here and there, seeing a show, like The Expanse, where you can take some notes about something that motivates you to add it or incorporate it into your game. But let's take it a different approach. The title of this episode is Panning for Gold. Sometimes you can go mining. You can be like the dwarves of Moria and delve deeply into the mountain to find your varied veins of treasure. But you're kind of dependent upon the mountain, right? You're really dependent upon that singular location. You have to go and find a new mountain, go find a new mine, that sort of thing. But sometimes you may want to have things brought to you, things that are fed from various sources. So it made me think of panning for gold. I'm still looking for that treasure. I'm still looking for that really cool thing to add to my game. But I think, well, you know what? Maybe I could go to a place where stuff is kind of brought in. So there's various sources. So let's say, when you're panning for gold, you're looking for a place where sediment is built up. It's being fed from various locations that may have that right biological and chemical combination that will bring about certain nuggets of gold or whatever other mineral that you think might be important. So you can start panning for that treasure. But it's dependent upon how fast the river is flowing, what it's doing at that given day, rainfall, that sort of thing. All of these different impacts or influences that can bring treasure to you. And then where do you go along the river to find that? So I kind of think of the world around me as that river. And depending upon the location I'm at, certain things are going to be provided to me as far as inspiration goes, or even information of how I could better my gameplay. So let's take this for an example. Take The Expanse for an example. Again, I'm not going to delve too deeply into it. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. It has a really good buildup of story. There are some slow parts. That's kind of what's going to happen with a series. But I really like the character arcs. I like the character threads as they're being spun out. And one of the things I noticed is the combination of environment and character, and how that, even if the set pieces are small, obviously it's a TV show, they have a budget they have to worry about. So there's not a lot of huge set pieces outside of CG material. So they have the opportunity to really delve into some of these set pieces and bring that story forward. So I was watching them unfold. Let's call, I think it's called Ceres Station. This is where some of the mining contingent, the Belters as they're called, reside. And these folks, they're laborers. They're intensely working just to survive and provide materials to, the Eloys of this story, the Earthers, and even in some cases to another faction that's from Mars. And the plight of these folks is also being told in the story, or in the surroundings. So the clothes they wear, the places they frequent, the status of the walls that are around them, and the way people look at them, that sort of thing. I actually went back and had a second and almost kind of a third viewing of episode 2, because it was bringing more of those set pieces to bear, to where I could see how they reveal these things. And in my notes, the thing that I was really focusing on in this kind of re-review of the episode was, how is that reveal done? How do they expand our knowledge of what's going on in this situation? Not just through what we see, but what we hear. People's attitudes, their reactions. One of the lead characters, a detective named Miller, very noir-esque, very 1930s, 1940s detective feel, but obviously with that futuristic spin. And we find out more about his character, that he has origins with the Belters. He's not necessarily an Earther, but he works for the Earther space police, let's call them, the Star Helix. And we start expanding more about what we know of this character. There's certain elements that are in him that are broken, and we want to know why. And as the story is revealed, we start to learn more and more and more. Why is he attached to this particular case that's given to him? How do we figure this out? And I know this series is based on a line of books, a series of books that were released, but I'm kind of focusing on the show and how it's visually giving me information. So I take the pace at how they reveal this info, and I want to try and work on my pacing. So again, I'm kind of panning for gold. I've had this opportunity. I was laid up sick, and I had an opportunity to look at some backlog of shows, and I thought to myself, let's see what I can get. And so I started learning more about pacing, being able to give information, provide information through various modes, the environment, sounds, tastes, smells, obviously all the senses, and then NPCs, obviously the characters that are that populate this environment. What do they have to tell? Whether it's a humanoid figure, or maybe even an animal, or maybe in the case of The Expanse, space junk that's floating by. What does that tell you about the area of the galaxy that you're in? I have to admit that when I was writing these notes, a lot of them were geared towards one of my favorite games, Stars Without Numbers. So talking about Sandbox last episode, that's kind of where my head went, and I started wondering about the development of different areas and how that impacts the culture that comes out of that particular area. If you're a Belter and all of your life is known for mining and for labor and for sweating and for not getting the just due that is yours, how does that breed an environment? What does that make the environment look like? So now, let's use a different example. I'm going to still stick with film media, but there was another film that I ended up watching. My wife got home that evening, and I'd been watching Sci Fi most of the day, and so we got up, went for a walk, and then we came back. She said, there's another show I wanted to take a look at. It's a movie with Eddie Murphy called Mr. Church. And it's a drama, one of those pieces where you're kind of guided towards thinking about yourself and the way you relate to others. Not the best dialogue in the world, not the best acting in the world, but yet it was a good story thread. And it introduced characters in such a way that you are compelled to want to know more about them. And in fact, the central figure, Mr. Church, played by Eddie Murphy, is enigmatic. We know that he's a cook, he's a very strong cook, and he's able to produce meals, wonderful meals. They don't talk about him having any formal education, but just that he had learned how to prepare these meals. And the rest of his life is a big mystery. So our other central figure, this young girl that's growing up with Mr. Church as kind of her charge, or she's his charge, we learn from her perspective more about this character, and in fact her curiosity becomes our curiosity. So kind of an interesting pairing of, and this is by no means or stretch of the imagination a mystery of any kind for this film. It's again, it's a drama, but the exploration of this girl's connection to Mr. Church kind of guides us in such a way that we want to ask more questions, and we start thinking about asking new questions that this young woman is starting to ask. And so through her power, and through her intellect, and through all of the things that she goes through in life, some of the challenges that she goes through in life, she develops different ways to ask different questions and to explore this mystery, this enigma that is Mr. Church. And so again, looking at pacing, looking at the way that I can reveal information in a game. So, this is going to be a pretty short episode. I'm running solo, so I didn't want to go too far into depth into a major topic without having somebody to bounce my ridiculous ideas off of. I love having that with Brian, and I can't wait for other guests that are going to be coming up, or guest hosts that are going to be coming up. But the main focus here, again, as a new game master, is to look for those elements, those elements of gold, the treasure that's kind of being brought to you along the river of life, or the river of entertainment, or whatever source of water that you're kind of residing by, metaphorically speaking. And be prepared to find things. Be prepared to be surprised by those things. As you game master, as you get into games, they're going to start sticking with you, because as the central figure that's putting together the story and wanting to make sure whether it's a brand new story or a module runs well, it's going to be in the forefront of your head, or at least in the back of your head, where certain things are going to clue you into, I think I want to bring that into the story, or I think that would make an excellent character for them to run into. So keep your eyes open. Well, actually, keep everything open: your ears, your eyes, your sense of taste, sense of smell, thoughts, and be aware of the world around you. Whether it is through television, whether it's through interactions with people, driving around in your car or riding on the bus. Be ready to kind of take in some information and to apply that to either a story that you're writing or an adventure that you're running, and be prepared to be inspired. Be receptive to it. Be ready to pan for gold at the given river that's at your feet. So that being said, I want to make sure that all of y'all have fun out there playing games. Get together with folks, learn more about them, sit around that real table or that virtual table, and be ready to bring in that story. Be ready to learn more about people and to have fun. So once again, I am your Uncle Jeff. Thanks so much for your time. I hope you're having a fantastic day, evening, whatevers. I don't care, as long as it's being fantastic. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great one.